Since it's 6 o'clock, I would like to call the school board meeting for Tuesday, June 16th, 2020 for the Des Moines Public Schools to order. Please call the roll.
Miss Anderson. Mr. Barron.
Here.
Miss Bradley.
Here.
Mrs. Caldwell Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Cody.
Here.
Miss Della Gardell.
Here.
And Miss Sawyer.
Here.
I'm also here. This is Miss Anderson.
I want to welcome all members of our community to our board meeting. We thank all guests, board members, and participants in advance for keeping their microphones muted until it is the appropriate time to speak. If you're interested in speaking to an agenda item, please let us know in the chat or contact Erin Jenkins at erin.jenkins@dmschools.org. The first item of business is approval of our agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Madam President, I would move
Yes.
the approval. I would move the approval of the agenda absent the personnel recommendations that I'd like to vote on separately.
Okay. Which, do you have that item number in front of you?
My computer just shut down.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. I've got it. I think it's item C23. If someone sees something different, please let me know, colleagues.
Thank you.
It is.
Yep,
and
that's
Kirsten,
right.
And Kirsten, I also need to pull C6 as well. I'll have to vote on that separately.
Okay. Are there any other changes or corrections to the agenda from other board members? Okay, I would take a motion to accept our agenda, while removing consent items 23 and 6 to separate votes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I believe we have a motion by Ms. Anderson and a second by Mr. Barron. Any discussion? All right, please call the vote.
Miss Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Miss Bradley.
Yes.
Miss Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Miss Della Gardell.
Yes.
And Miss Sawyer.
Yes.
The next item on our agenda is approval of minutes for Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Caldwell Johnson, move approval.
And I'm sorry, this should be for Tuesday, June 2nd, not May 19th.
Caldwell Johnson, move approval.
Barron, second.
We have a motion by Caldwell Johnson and a second by Barron. Please call the vote.
Miss Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Miss Bradley.
Yes.
Miss Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Miss Della Gardell.
Yes.
Miss Sawyer.
I'm not sure if you got that, but yes.
The vote is approved 7-0. Without any district recognitions this evening, I'll move on to consent items. The next item on the agenda are our consent items. We allow any person the opportunity to speak to the board for up to 5 minutes following the presentation of an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak to an agenda item, please indicate so in the chat or email Erin Jenkins. Remarks must be germane to the agenda, and we ask that you avoid references to personality and character attacks, as those types of comments serve no productive purpose. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with the speaker regarding comments made to agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing said discussion, deliberation, and determinations as deemed necessary. Ms. Bradley, I believe, do you have the consent agenda or the consent motion this evening?
Yes, I do. I move that the board approve the consent items in accordance with the recommended action for each item on the consent agenda, including bills previously authorized, certified, and approved for payment by the board secretary in the amount of $4,140,744.91 and procurement card transactions in the amount of $174,696.51.
Is there a second?
Second.
I second Anderson.
We have a motion by Bradley and a second by Anderson, I believe.
Yes.
All right, are there any questions or discussion on any of the consent items outside of C23 or C6? Or do we have any speakers?
I do have a speaker, yes.
Okay.
Christy Willett.
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. My name's Christy Willett. My son is Cameron Willett. He currently attends preschool at Carlisle Elementary, and Cameron has developed many friendships at school as well as in the neighborhood and our community. Most of the children living in our neighborhood attend the school together, and they go to the same daycare before and after school. It would mean the world to us and my son if he could continue going to the same school and daycare with his friends. Even though we are just a couple blocks shy of being in the district, Carlisle schools as well as the community really feel like home to us. Thank you for your time and this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any discussion or questions regarding any of our consent agenda items this evening?
I do have a question actually on, let's see, C9, the negotiation with AFSCME. I was able to sit in on the opening bids from AFSCME and from the district, and it seemed like they were more or less aligned. I also remember last year it got a little bit contentious with that group, so I'm just wondering how the process played out in terms of, I don't know, mood, tone.
I would just offer, we thought we had a really positive negotiations from start to finish with AFSCME. With both AFSCME and DMEA, we reached tentative agreements just prior to the interruption due to COVID-19. And because of what the usual routine has been for AFSCME in terms of conducting a vote for ratification and some AFSCME international rules that had to be navigated, it did take an extended period of time for them to actually be able to conduct a vote safely. So that happened on Saturday, I want to say the 6th. We know that they ratified. We don't know what the percentage of the ratification vote was. But all in all, I thought it was a very smooth and positive process. And we did get to a 3-year agreement, which is something that that for sure AFSCME has wanted for quite some time.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, board colleagues? All right, hearing none, please go ahead and call the roll call vote.
Miss Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle.
Yes.
And Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
Okay, so now we need to take a motion on item C6, compensation for non-bargaining groups.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
In the past on open enrollment cases, you've kind of clarified that we have staff that will reach out to families
yes.
immediately afterwards, and I think that I maybe I just did it, but if there's any other guidance you want to offer to at least the parent that spoke earlier about the process going forward.
No, Ms. Willett, you can expect to hear someone speak from you. I did jot that down in my notes, and then I was distracted by not wanting to forget the other agenda items. So thank you for the reminder, Mr. Barron. Someone will be reaching out to you here shortly regarding next steps on your request. I would now entertain motions on item C6.
I move approval of item C6.
I'll second. Cody?
All right, we have a
Heather
motion.
Anderson.
Is now exiting.
We have a motion from Barron and a second from Mr. Cody regarding item C6. Is there any discussion regarding this item?
Kirsten, I'd just like to let the board know that I am abstaining from the vote just due to my sister working for the district, and she's a part of that group.
Great, thank you for letting us know. Any other discussion or questions, board members? If not, please call the vote.
Ms. Anderson? Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley? Oh, abstain, I'm sorry. Ms. Caldwell Johnson?
I think you may have been muted, Terry.
Yes.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle?
Yes.
And Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Motion passes 501. The next item on our agenda is item C23, personnel recommendations. Do I have a motion and a second?
Sawyer, so moved.
Second, Barron.
We have a motion by Sawyer and a second by Barron. Are there any discussions or questions from board members?
Madam Chair, I'll be abstaining from this vote as I have a family member who is on the list for personnel recommendations.
Okay, well, we look forward to having your family member join us in our district. Any other questions or discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Ms. Anderson? Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson?
Abstain.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle?
Yes.
And Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Kirsten, I think you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have hit the button 2 times. Motion passes 501. Next item on our agenda is item D1, our monitoring report, Algebra 1, Part 4, Black male students. Dr. Ahart, I will turn this over to you for the presentation.
All right, thank you. So we've come to the end of the year, and the year is not ending, did not end in the manner that we originally had anticipated. We did have, I think, really good momentum generated behind all of our SMART goals, and including the Black male algebra goal. For the other 2 SMART goals, as you know, because of the nature of the testing that we use to be the primary monitoring for progress towards those goals, we had no way to gather that data. So both of the 3rd grade literacy goals have no new meaningful data because of the interruption in instruction, normal instruction, since spring break. With Algebra 1, it's a little bit of a different story. Just as almost every other district in the state chose to do because of the very narrow scope of flexibility that we had in delivering instruction virtually. By state rules, at the end of the year, we had a voluntary plan rather than a mandatory plan. So we were not able to introduce new material. We were not able to take attendance. We were not able to provide really new grades. And so students were really ended new instruction prior to spring break, and then did have an opportunity to bolster any learning that they were perhaps deficient in prior to spring break. So while we do have new measures for this goal, I just want to stress that it's a compromised measure. It is what we said we would report out on, but it is not. It does not meet the same standards that would normally have been a part of the story. So I just want to frame that before we start going through the report. We do have Sarah Doherty and Courtney Wallstrom with us tonight to talk us through that in more detail. And so I'll kick it off to them. I also wanted to say that as a part of a further part of this report, we will be providing a broader overview of where we are in terms of the three existing SMART goals and the plan to move forward with them. We didn't think it probably made sense to deliver 2 more literacy reports that in essence had no new data in them since the last one that you received, but we will address what was requested by the board as this sort of the second part of this presentation. So Sarah, I'll kick that off to you.
Actually, Tom, this is Noelle.
I'll kick it off to Noelle.
That's okay.
Sorry, Noelle.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and you should be able to see our PowerPoint up here shortly.
Noel.
Sorry, I was just talking for like 30 seconds with no microphone on. So you'd think I'd have this down by now. So anyway, as Tom set it up, we're going to certainly talk about the recent algebra report that you all received. We do want to talk through kind of a warning and viewing the data and some limitations due to our context, but more broadly speak to these SMART goals and how we worked this spring really hard prior to COVID closure to really articulate a 3-year plan in service of these goals. So we finally have almost wrapped up our community problem solving process, and that's now resulted in a 3-year plan that's still in draft form, but we did want to bring the board up to speed on how this particular goal fits within that larger plan, but also know that this plan is in the context of the other SMART goals as well. So we do want to set the stage, and certainly we're right in the middle now. We've started our town halls to address how can we be a better district? How can we be an anti-racist district? And so this quote, I think, kind of frames the work that we're undertaking.
Noelle, I'm not sure that your slideshow advanced.
Oh. Let me try this again because it's showing fine on my end. How's that?
It does not appear to have changed on our end.
Oh,
I was able to advance it myself. If you just click it, well, at least I did from my phone. So.
Oh, yeah, I can do it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let me let me keep going. I'm on the third slide, DMPS goal action plan. So as I said before,
Do you want to share the presentation again?
yeah, let me shut this off and see if I can just reshare. How's that, Tom? Is that showing up?
Go full screen. Can you
Yeah,
get
just go to
Yep.
presentation.
Yeah.
And we should be good.
We good?
Yep.
Yep.
Hey, okay. So this is the draft that we submitted to the board as part of an attachment, and it really outlines the process that we went through. It articulates our outcomes over the 3 years in service of our board goals. So I am going to talk really high level without getting into too much detail, knowing that a lot of the details do exist in this goal action plan document. So the first step that we're trying to do is establish some common vocabulary. So of course, why do we exist? That's our mission. What does it look like in the future for us? That's our vision. And what do we need to accomplish? That's the goals. And that's the goals that we continue to point to that the board has set for us that become kind of our North Star for the work. So are we on track to meet our goals? That's what we're referring to as our progress measures. I know the board is familiar with this language. Then from there, we've really taken over to say, how will we accomplish our goals? We've identified key levers, and we'll talk about those a little bit. We have referenced those in the past, but we haven't really spent a lot of time in detail on those. So our plan is organized around these key levers that really emerge as a result of that community problem-solving process, getting down to some root causes as to why we haven't made the progress that we wanted to make in the past. So those key levers were designed as a result of that root cause analysis. From there, we've said, what do we need to focus on? What are our outcomes over the course of those 3 years? Those are not our goals. These are really about inputs. What are the adult actions? What are the progress items that we need to see in our district in order to achieve our student outcome goals? How will we implement our desired outcomes? We're calling those objectives. And within that plan, our objectives are really look and read more like action steps. And then of course, what changes will we make along the way? That's what we're referring to as our monitoring and evaluation plan. So as we've referenced before, the board has set forth a really clear monitoring schedule for us. It's our plan and intent to cascade that down to the school level as well, so that that process is mirrored all the way at the school level. It does us no good to continually report out to the board if that same monitoring process isn't happening at the classroom and school level. So you're very familiar with our board goals, so I certainly don't need to go through those again. But for our public, we wanted to make sure that we reference those clearly. Early literacy for both all students in 3rd grade and Black males explicitly. And then tonight's update will focus on goal 3, which is our algebra goal, B or higher in 9th grade. So I will turn it over to Sarah Doherty, our Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning.
Good evening, and as Dr. Ahart mentioned, Courtney Wallstrom is joining us to our secondary math curriculum coordinator. Again, this is a slide that you're likely familiar with, but it's important to use it to frame our context every time. And you'll notice that our benchmarks for 2020 will be to aim for 21% of our Black male students to earn a B or better by the end of 9th grade. And you'll notice that's an August mark because we still have summer school underway, and that is true of this summer as well. So we do have a progress measure tonight beyond just our board goal measure. And that progress measure is of the students who were enrolled in Algebra 1, our Black male students in Algebra 1, and their performance by the end of 9th grade this year. So this measure, and it's hard to see there, 37.4% of our Black male students were enrolled in Algebra 1 and earned a B or higher prior to March 30th for semester 2, or was enrolled in Algebra 1 for semester 2 and used the springtime during school closure to improve their grade on topics taught prior to March 30th to a B or higher. And you can see we did exceed that benchmark goal, which was 24.3%. So those are the Black male students who were enrolled in Algebra 1 and their performance by the end of 9th grade. And then we wanted to orient you again to the goal measure. Again, on the surface, grades are very simple and clean, but they're a more complex measure than they might appear. So our goal measure is the percent of Black male students earning a B or higher by the end of 9th grade. And it's important to note that all Black male 9th grade students are in the denominator, both those who've taken it potentially in 8th grade or in 9th grade, and those who are enrolled in another math course. And students, in order to make progress toward that goal for us, would have to average a B between both semesters. Oh, sorry. Noelle, when you advance that slide.
I'm sorry, Sarah, it is advanced on my end.
Oh no, oh no, it froze.
Let me try this again.
Okay.
Are you seeing it now?
Not yet.
All right, let me stop sharing and reshare again.
Oh, now I see it. Oh.
This is so fun. This is every day, all day. This is our new world. Here, let's try it again. How's that?
Got it. Thank you. So here is the current state of our goal measure before summer school grades have been completed. And this is the percent of Black male students earning a B or higher in Algebra 1 by the end of 9th grade. And that prior slide, I just, because we had a little hiccup there, all Black male 9th grade students were in the denominator. Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Our benchmark goal was 26.7% of our Black male students earning a B or higher, and we reached 16.2%. So that's a decrease of 7.7%, and there are a couple of notes on this. Many students had a B or higher in one or other semester. But a reminder that to count in this numerator, they had to average a B across both semesters. And then again, Dr. Ahart referenced this in the introduction to this report. That second semester was supposed to cover 3 topics in Algebra 1, but we only had the opportunity to learn 1 or maybe 1.5 of those topics before school closure. And so again, we did not get the totality of the intended learning for Algebra 1 because of the voluntary learning plan. And so this represents learning before March 30th. So about half of the intended learning for second semester in Algebra 1.
The other thing I might add, Sarah, is last year when we look at trend data, we would also factor in summer school data. We saw a significant increase due to summer school completions. And so obviously we don't yet have that data as part of this measure.
Correct. So in our response, and I think this is a culminating response over the reports we've provided throughout this year, but that we do see that Black male students who are enrolled in Algebra 1 are increasingly successful. Certainly that's due to our beginning or our initial implementation of curriculum focused on shifts in the core and support for that curriculum in 9th grade. We've been piloting it, as you might remember, in some of our middle school classes. And in the coming year, The coming year, that will be across all 6th through 8th grade math classrooms. I know that next bullet says what else here, and I actually have something here. I wasn't sure that we would have this, and I don't have data to share yet, but we, as you might remember, have been involved in a partnership with Iowa State University, studying the identity and the feelings of particularly our Black male students in Algebra 1 and our teachers in Algebra 1. And we have some preliminary findings from Iowa State that are giving us some insights in the student-teacher relationship, and telling us a little bit about what students believe the purpose and relevance of math learning, particularly Algebra 1, is. And so our next steps there will be to dig a little deeper into that. And as you can imagine, all sorts of things came with some barriers this spring. But we're looking forward to correlating student responses about their relationships and their relevance, their feelings of relevance about math to their grades and outcomes. And then we're really want to also look beyond just the students who are enrolled in Algebra 1 and want to find out if students outside of Algebra 1 are also have different experiences or connections and relationships to their teachers and to math learning. So what else here? It's digging into that, that second layer beyond just curriculum and instruction, but to how students and teachers feel and build identity in math learning. We've also learned very clearly that curriculum and instruction and relationships only mean as much as students have access to them. And so we know that access to Algebra 1 is the key, and that will be become an increasingly concentrated focus for us. We know that there's the instructional access, meaning that kids are ready and prepared, and Algebra 1 is the right place for them in 9th grade. And so I'm looking forward to focusing on middle school curriculum and support in and of using what we've learned with Algebra 1 to do so. But we also know, again, that there are systems at play. And so our focus around the systems for enrollment and advancement in middle school and high school, and scaffolds within the course, but then also when students need extra support and remediation, those on-ramps back to an on-time completion of Algebra 1 are going to be critical. So I look forward to those in the coming year as being very concentrated areas of intense effort across all levels and layers of our district.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about more broadly beyond just our Algebra 1 focus of those levers and how we intend to lead this work. Obviously, equity continues to be at the forefront of all of our plans, and it's the filter which all actions go through. So as you all know, I referenced the community problem-solving process. This was a high-level overview of how that looked. Students, school staff, community stakeholders, and district staff were all at the table. We went through a series of root cause analysis with verification before planning any actions. So from there, we did identify some key levers, and those levers have really driven our action planning. The document that we submitted to the board, the action plan document, that's just a high-level overview. We do have detailed plans that outline all of our action steps that we certainly could provide, but the level of detail was a little more than we thought you all would want. So the document that you have just explains the process and how we went through the various actions to get to a strategic plan. So these are our levers. They're really broken into two categories: universal tier, and that's what we're doing for everybody, every school, every student. Some of these probably look very familiar. And then of course, we have the foundational tier. Those are the things that must be in place in a parallel system as we're supporting universal to ensure that those foundational things are happening. We are working really hard to merge our work with equity and instruction so that equity doesn't live in a separate silo, and then we go about business as usual with instruction. For example, we're working really hard around access. Access is an equity issue, so helping our schools and helping our leaders and our teachers to make those connections, that as we're working to get every single student in Algebra 1 by 9th grade, that is a charge related to equity. So we have also established a new leadership structure to ensure that the work happens and gets monitored. So we have worked to establish an MTSS leadership team. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports. So that is a cross-departmental team that interfaces with cabinet, certainly, or is kind of a subset of cabinet that's really charged with alignment across the system so that our schools are feeling less fragmented. It's charged with the implementation of the strategic plan and monitoring of that plan. And then, of course, the identification of those levers and desired outcomes in service of our board goals. You all see where you fit in that process. You're the ones holding all of us accountable to those goals. And we're also accountable to our schools in service of those goals. From that MTSS leadership team, we have leaders on that team that are leading more specific task forces. So we have, for example, task forces that are work groups assigned to each goal area. So SEL has a work group, algebra has a work group, and early or literacy has a work group. And those are the ones articulating more granular action plans, and they report up to that MTSS leadership team. So we're finally in a place where we're organized and ready to execute these plans. So as I mentioned, those task forces are made up of teachers, some administrators, curriculum experts, and people who are closest to the work. And they're really assigned to managing those project plans. So with that, we want to open it up for some discussion about both or either the algebra data that we've presented tonight and or the larger picture strategic plan.
Noelle, when you talk about access being an equity issue, can you talk about what, can you give us like kind of a real world example of what
Sure.
access farther down the pipeline, how that affects, like access to what, by whom, where, and how that impacts that goal?
I'll give you a really specific example of how the system has been broken and how that directly impacts students, and particularly special education students or students of color. So the old system may have identified a student for special education at very early in their elementary experience. That put them on a path and a trajectory to then engage in math that was out of level. And we couched it in, you know, we need to meet them where they are, but we never actually gave them access to what their grade level expectations were, which then put them on a path to middle school that was out of level, which then put them on a path to high school that was out of level. So a student is not even set up to even achieve Algebra 1 by 9th grade simply by the track that they were put on due to an identification that happened very early in their educational career. So that is something that we did to them. Students very often never got out of that track. And we would take like a course that for everyone else, for example, might be a year-long course. And for students in this track, it might take them 2 years to complete that same course. So they don't even have a chance in that example to access grade level content. So those are the types of systems that we're dismantling. It sounds simple on the surface, but we're also now trying to support students who have years of gaps in mathematics knowledge. So how do you backfill those skills by also now giving them access? Because the solution can't simply just be to dump them in an algebra class. We have to make sure that they have the skills to be successful and the supports in place. But that starts well before 8th and 9th grade. That starts early on in the elementary system. I don't know, Courtney or Sarah, if you have anything to add to the access question.
I would just add that, to piggyback off Noelle's example, we have learned a lot about grade level access and its importance. And so if a student is identified as needing special ed services, it's important that we're providing them grade level access in addition to that extra support. So if I'm in 6th grade and I am in a self-contained math class, I'm learning 6th grade math while I am also getting additional support on earlier skills that maybe I don't yet have. So I'm getting both, not just those foundational skills.
And I'm actually really happy that we structured the goal this way, because as you can see in that second progress measure, we cannot meet that goal without also addressing our access issue. And as you can see, also, we do have some celebration in that when students are with us in Algebra 1, our Black males are showing some reasonable progress toward that goal, but that alone is not going to get us there. We got to get more kids in the class, and then more kids once in successful.
Another example closer to that secondary level, I think, was something we had shared at a prior meeting as an example of access. When we had ELL students come into our district in middle school or high school, they may have been placed in a math course in accordance with their language acquisition level, not necessarily that aligned with their math skills. And that was something that we've been able to tap into and make a change to just in the last year, where we now can provide a math assessment to place them and then give them appropriately in Algebra 1, if that's what that assessment indicates, and then give them appropriate language access supports so that they're remaining on grade level and their language skills wouldn't prevent them from accessing on grade level math that they are indeed ready for.
I guess I have a related question on that. In the past, when we've dealt with stuff like this, I mean, as a math teacher, a lot of the, doing on grade level and the backfilling, I mean, that's been put, the burden of that has been put on the classroom teacher. And when you've got a class of 25 or 30 third graders or 35 eighth graders or whatever, that's a heavy load to carry for the average classroom teacher. So how is this going to look different going forward than that, given the new focus?
I can start, and then Courtney, you can certainly jump in. You're absolutely right, Cody. And if I remember correctly, you were a middle school teacher, correct? So we know to be successful, we have to strengthen core long before middle school, because those gaps just get wider and wider and wider, and it becomes virtually impossible for our secondary teachers to be the solution for that student. So that's why early identification before those gaps get too large, and investment in a quality tier, focusing on prevention versus intervention has to be where our efforts are. So that's why we're going back to adopting new curriculum, training our teachers up, making sure that kids are successful before they get to middle school. That's our long-term plan. Of course, that doesn't address the short-term things that need to be put in place. And so additional supports and interventions will continue to be built to catch those kids who are already past elementary, but it is not a simple fix by any stretch.
I really appreciate that question. As a classroom teacher just 2 years ago in high school, that is definitely a burden that I have carried myself. It is something that I am super excited about in our new curriculum that we will be adopting 6 through 8 next year, and then also Algebra 1 through Algebra 2. For every single unit, there is it's called a knowledge check or check your readiness, that helps teachers, and they can give it in chunks or one question at a time, that helps teachers determine what skills students already have or may need, and it's by lesson. So I will know if a student struggles with question number 2 on this assessment, they're going to need that skill for lesson 10. And so I might, especially if I have a large group of students who need that, I will have something that I can tap into, that it's a specific skill that I'll address for those kids. We're also taking a very hard look at our intervention system for students who we know need more than that. So they need more than just a very short, just-in-time learning. They need more support. And so that's something that Sarah and I with the task force are looking at how do we build an intervention system that is meeting the needs of students that are deeper.
So I just have a quick question. What is the percentage of kids or numbers that are in summer school, and how is that working right now? I mean, obviously virtually, but how are those connections happening?
I would have to get back to you on exact numbers. Mike Vukovic is on the call. Mike, I don't know if you have any additional information about summer school that you could chime in.
Can you ask that question one more time?
Yeah, I was just wondering what our numbers were, or percentages of kids that are in summer school that that currently are Black males in algebra that would impact this. I think the percentage that you had referenced in your slide saying August is usually when you measure because you count in summer school. And so I didn't know what that number could look like.
Yeah, I only have our total engagement numbers. I don't have those broken down any more than that, but I can definitely get that information and get it to the board.
Kelly, your microphone was on. I'm not sure we heard your question.
Oh, see, I'm what I'm doing here. So no, I was just asking what barriers do you guys see, or what is it that we can help you with at this time?
COVID. No, I mean, I think the data is clear. Obviously, we'll continue to invest in the levers, and we say this every time, staying focused on those things, continuing to monitor what matters the most. I think this data is clear to us, though, that we need to double down on our efforts around access. And so I don't know that there's implications for the board in particular, other than just understanding and keeping that as a progress measure, because that is a critical one and has identified what we're predicting could keep us from meeting the goal if it goes unaddressed.
So this is Carrie, and I know I bring this up a lot, so I probably am starting to sound a little bit like a broken record, but that's okay because I'm just going to keep saying it. In order for our students to be successful, I think we have to recognize the value and importance of our community partners. And I know that during COVID, we've talked about ways that we lift up our nonprofit partners and other community partners to support the needs of our students. And not knowing what's going to be ahead of us as we begin to think about return to school, strengthening those partnerships and figuring out ways that we leverage the resources of those partners to the benefit of our students is going to be probably more critical than ever. I know over the summer, not everyone is functioning, but there are a lot of people that are. And I just feel like we really have to figure out how to max out those relationships to not only the benefit of the district, but more importantly, to the benefit of students, especially those that don't have parents who are equipped to support their learning needs. I think schools do a great job, but we have a lot of kids that are out of school for a fairly significant period of time, and especially during COVID, that's been intensified, probably tenfold. So I know that we have work that's happening with our community schools folks and others, but I just really challenge us to figure out ways that we really focus on that part of a collaborative effort that I think could accrue to our benefit in ways that we're just not maximizing right now.
Terry, you're absolutely right. And we've called that out as a specific component of our return to learn plans. And so we'll talk more about that in the work session, but we fully recognize that this challenge is insurmountable without those partnerships.
I want to add that I think Courtney and I, along with Allison Vukovic and our community schools coordinators, were really excited about some plans we had going into this summer. But I think, and hearing, I don't think it's bad to be a broken record because everybody hears it at a different time and adds another nuance to it. And I think our return to learn discussions are an opportunity to take what I thought were maybe good plans going into this summer to leverage our community schools coordinators and summer programming and take it a step further or broader in terms of those community partnerships. So there are opportunities here in your questions and in our return to learn planning to expand and deepen what were good and solid plans going into this year, and have lifted up some priorities and some levers that might have gone not totally utilized to their fullest extent, to your point. So I'm looking forward to doubling down on those actions and having some time to do that.
I just wanted to raise up, just as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about the work the board has yet to do this summer. We're going to be appointing a new board member. We're writing an SEL goal. And I wanted to bring to the forefront that I think this board has staked pretty clearly in the ground around these goals, and that we value these, and we look forward to being joined by a colleague that will help reinforce that work. So I guess that was more of just a message from, I think I speak for all the board members, to the staff in like, we're going to stay the course. This is, we think that this is the right work, and this is a hiccup, but we're hopeful that, once we have a chance back in the fall with our kids, that all of this planning and conversation that your team is taking time to do now will hopefully bear fruit in this next year. So. If there's no further conversation or discussion, I think we can, I suppose I probably should have taken the motion before we started having this conversation, but we were having such good conversation. I can take a motion and a second, and we can move along with this, unless there's other things that board members would like to discuss or ask questions about. Okay, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I move approval.
Sawyer, second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Go ahead and please call the vote.
Ms. Anderson? Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson?
I think you're muted, Terry.
Yes.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Stella Gardell?
Yes.
And Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Okay. We have no information only items. Next up, we have items of privilege, and I am going to yield this time to my Vice Chair, Dwana Bradley, and just say that I'm going to amplify her statement tenfold. So.
Thank you, Kirsten. When people read Black Lives Matters, they add a word that isn't there. They read only Black Lives Matter. And so they respond and ask, why can't we say all lives matter? Sadly, until the day comes when we honestly address the issues of race in this country, until the day comes when people are no longer killed because of the color of their skin, until the day comes when the systemic racism that exists at too many levels of our society is gone, until the day comes when Black lives really do matter, then there will never be a day when all lives matter. A little over a week ago, we added the words Black Lives Matter to every sign in front of our school buildings. It was both a symbolic gesture as well as important message. A reminder that we will do all we can to be an anti-racist school district, from our focus on equity to the community conversations we are having this week. You see, at Des Moines Public Schools, Nearly 2/3 of our students are students of color. More than 1 out of 5 is Black. As our community and nation debates and protests over racial injustices, these are not abstract issues for our students. These are issues that have directly impacted too many of them, their families, friends, and classmates. The question isn't why does Des Moines Public Schools say Black Lives Matters? The question is why doesn't everyone say it? In education, we know as well as anyone that our students are not only informed about the world around them, but they have a strong and thoughtful opinions and beliefs. We unapologetically support their right to express them. Today, we see students from marches to baseball games peacefully drawing attention to these important matters. And as long as I have a say, we will stand behind them, even when they choose to take a knee. By proclaiming Black Lives Matter, our school district is not only going to be on the right side of history, more importantly, we are going to be on the side of doing what is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Board members, are there any other announcements or items of privilege that you wish to share this evening? If none, I will turn it over to Dr. Ahart for his report.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Potent and passionate and message that I fully support. Wanted to just call folks' attention. We are getting some interestingly, some feedback even from as far away as New York about the actions of our Roosevelt baseball team who've chosen to take a knee during the national anthem. I understand how that can cause some controversy, but I have to say how proud I am that our students are engaged and informed and respectfully expressing themselves and actively engaging in the community conversation, the statewide and national and nationwide conversation. So I feel if, despite the challenges that we've had over the last 2.5 months of the school year relative to COVID-19 and the frustrations that we have and not making more progress on our SMART goals, I do think that student activism, student voice is alive and well, and I'm proud that we have that as part of the legacy of the district, despite all of the challenges that are happening around us over the last several months. Wanted to make a couple of notes. There was a very furious, fast and furious action at the legislature last week before they finally concluded the 2020 session on Sunday. There was talk, as I'm sure you're all aware, of some possible changes, retroactive changes to the law that governs the expenditure of SAVE dollars by school boards. No changes did end up transpiring as a result of the session. But we wanted to wait for the board to take action on any further issues relative to the Drake and DMPS Community Stadium until we were sure that that was the case. We were unable to get the next steps in that process on the board agenda with a full 24 hours in advance of posting the agenda. So those items will be coming in July. And another note, we were tardy in getting the SEL progress towards compliance with the new SEL board policy posted. So we will be sharing that report in July as well. I think, I guess two other quick notes. Just one, the year has concluded. We've said this before, but we can't say it enough. I couldn't be more proud of the staff in our schools for their flexibility and determination to make sure that we kept meeting the needs of our students and families through these really unique and challenging times through the pandemic. And I just want to lift up that we're working very hard on return to learn plan. There are so many different factors to take into account. Information on which to base those decisions is becoming increasingly difficult to find at the local level. And schools really have been put in an impossible position where decisions of this magnitude statewide seem perhaps more appropriately made at the state level. So that being said, there is not one magic solution that everyone will find equally satisfactory. But what we are keeping first and foremost as the driver behind our decision making is advancing the education of all of our students. And to Terry's point earlier, that does mean that we will be leaning more heavily on the broader community to provide some supports that our community has come to expect from us, but that are not specifically core to educating our students. And that we will also be prioritizing those students who are most at risk of not having adequate progress to be on track to meet the mission of DMPS, specifically the board SMART goals. So this is a complex process. I can assure the entire community that we have very much a can-do attitude, and that the plan that we will ultimately unveil in the very near future will be something that is perhaps a bit more nuanced than folks may have been expecting, but one that is completely driven by ensuring that we're first prioritizing the SMART goals that the board has firmly, as Ms. Delagardelle put it, put a stake in the ground around, and then back mapping from there to ensure that all of our students and staff have a safe, productive experience, and that we continue to progress and accelerate progress for those for whom acceleration is most needed. So I appreciate the entire community's patience and ability to roll with these very undulating waves of uncertainty that we've all been navigating together. And I'm looking forward to soon having a plan that all of us can rally around and get even broader community support than we've had previously to ensure that all of our students and families have the supports that they need, not just for their own health and well-being, but for the advancement of the education of their pre-K through 12 students. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Ahart. So the board can expect to have a more formalized update regarding return to learn. When might we expect to hear from, will we be needing a work session or?
Well, I think we can decide that after our discussion this evening. I mean, part of what we would like to, I would like to get a clearer sense of. Had a nice meeting with the DMEA leadership this afternoon, and Josh Brown, I'm not sure if he's on here in tonight's meeting or not. I think he is. He put it very aptly. You know, we talked a bit about the state of COVID-19 that we're currently experiencing in the community, and I said that in many respects it would actually be it would have been safer to stay in school in March than it would be to open schools right now, given the continued consistent spread of the virus. But all of us, I believe, are feeling the inertia created from a number of different sectors of the community, where there's just a real desire, which I certainly understand, of getting things back to normal, and certainly getting the economy back on solid footing, which means getting all of our adults back to work. And a lot of our adults are reliant on our schools, not just for educating their children, but for ensuring that they're safe and well taken care of while they are at work. We have a core mission of being an academic institution, but we also are also relied on for basically childcare as well, just from a pragmatic perspective. And the decisions that we're being asked to make now, as Josh put it, have become more of a political decision than a public health decision. And we recognize that reality. Certainly, it doesn't make the decision making any clearer, but we certainly know that that's something that can't be avoided and needs to be taken into account. But first and foremost, I do think the number one priority does need to be ensuring that we're taking good care of staff and students and not putting anyone unnecessarily in harm's way.
That makes sense. We actually don't have a work session posted for this evening, so I don't think we can actually have that conversation.
Okay,
It looks
well,
like it did get posted.
okay, here's what I will.
That's why I was asking, when would we like to discuss this?
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. All right. So here's what I would offer. So we had a really another intense discussion, a few of us, specific to high school. Got a couple of actually, Josh shared a unique idea, I thought unique, in terms of another approach to potentially scheduling elementary. I'll just put it this way. We feel pretty confident that at some point in time, for some period of time over the course of the year, most, if not all, of the district will have to be virtual because of an anticipated, surge or second wave. So we know that if that's something that we're relatively certain of, we know we can't afford to have any turnaround time to transition from whatever all virtual looks like to virtual. So the starting point, as we had talked about 2 weeks ago, is to ensure that we're in a position to go fully virtual. So we're ordering computers that are actually tablets that don't have a separate detachable keyboard for our pre-K and K students. So we will be in a position for everyone to be one-to-one. So that's one important step. We still have some connectivity issues to work through, but that's well underway. So that's one piece. Professional development for staff to put them in the best position to execute as a virtual teacher is paramount on that as well. And then the second piece, and we're trying to fit all the pieces together now. Some version, and it has to be some version of hybrid at high school, middle school, and elementary school, and how those fit together, especially in regards to transportation and the actual time of day that those things take place, is something that we're still trying to fit those pieces together. So the idea is that everyone will have face-to-face time, but not everyone will have face-to-face time every day. And some of our students, as I tried to reference earlier, some of our students who we deem higher priority for direct contact time based on board goals and various at-risk factors will have more in-person, in actually physically in school time. So there's a plan coming together that will be driven by health and safety and also by board goals and equity, but it will look different at the different levels, partly based on how those structures currently exist. Elementary, it's students spend most of their day with one teacher, so that's a different equation than middle school, and then high school, a much wider array of courses with different requirements in terms of having to actually perform things in real time, in real life. So I will have this is Tuesday. By Tuesday of next week, I will have a draft. It'll be a fairly fleshed out draft, but a draft return to learn plan for the board's review. And I don't know if we want to talk about setting a work session on that now. or if you want to wait and digest something, or if we should just discuss it at a work session. I'm certainly open to the board's preference.
I might recommend maybe having us set something and having you see if you can send it to us in advance. We have time to review it, and then we would have an opportunity to ask questions, is kind of what I think I would appreciate.
That sounds like a good plan to me.
If that sounds amenable to the board. I'm seeing head nods. So I think, Tom, is this due for you to the state by July 1st? And I'm sure your team will probably have it done probably by Friday the 26th. Would that be? Or what's your time? You tell us, what's your time?
Well, it's kind of two things. What we have to submit to the state is requires a lot less detail than what I feel like we need to deliver to the board and to our community. So what my sense of urgency is about getting information out to families so they can start doing planning, and so that we can be more specifically um, um, interfacing with our community partners to ensure that we have, the resulting gaps in services filled. So I think that if we can have a robust discussion and vetting on what would be the 23rd, that's a week from today. How does that sound, Kirsten?
I think that sounds fine to me. I know that we've had a few board members ask for things to happen maybe a little bit more during the workday. So I'll leave it up to my board colleagues for dictating the time, because I'm open and flexible that day.
Yeah, we could do a noon meeting, whatever the board's pleasure is. We can certainly make work. I guess one other thing that I would offer is we've been really pushing, making a real concerted effort to get as many of our parents to complete the Return to Learn survey as possible. And we're up over 70% return rate at this point, and we're continuing to try to drive that home so that we can continue to monitor that data to help also best inform that Return to Learn plan as well.
Hey, Tom, I just wanted to reiterate something that we emailed about this weekend. Is I really want to make sure that we are scheduling some time with parents virtually in the lead up to July 1, so we can start talking to them about what they're going to be seeing. I think there's two reasons. I think part of it is so that they understand what we're putting in that plan, but also so that we're doing it early enough so we can hear from them and react to them if there's things we need to change. So I want to get that one on record, that we need to start talking to our families about what to expect soon.
Right. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, Rob.
So, the other thing, and I had a chat with a few of my friends at the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and I have no idea. I feel like return to work is going to look different depending upon where you work, where you're employed. And there likely are going to be a larger number of people that will continue to work. There likely will be some that will return. And I think, in following up on Rob's point, when we had sort of the voluntary distance learning following spring break until the end of the school year, that didn't present the same sort of challenge that I think a much more robust required distance learning engagement as we plan to return is going to. So also being sensitive to families that have to work, don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Essential workers that need to work because of the role they play, and then others that are required to work because of what their employer tells them they have to do, are all factors that we have to weigh and evaluate. student outcomes perspective is also equally important from a community perspective relative to the role that we play and the fact that for so many of our families, we are their pathway to food. We're their pathway, before and after school child care, during the day learning, which gives people the ability to go to work and earn what they need to take care of their family. So our decision is critically important relative to just about any and every person in this community. And, to Rob's point, engaging parents early is important, but I also think how we approach this in a way that allows people to feel like they can continue to live their lives and do the things that they have to do to support their families and to support this community is as important as anything. So I'm not suggesting that you haven't taken any of those things into consideration, but this decision is monumental in so many ways. So
Absolutely.
I want us to be unequivocal about leaving no stone unturned in terms of our engagement on this and being absolutely transparent in terms of what it's going to take in order for our kids to get where they need to be, but in order for us to be the critical community partner that we'll have to be in order for everything to happen the way it needs to. We've got a lot of pressure on us. I mean, at the end of the day, our decision is critical for just about any other decision that families are going to have to make. So, I don't envy what you're being asked to do, nor what we're being asked to do, but I'll stop.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. That's exactly where we are. That's exactly where we are.
So it sounds like perhaps having a conversation next Tuesday where the board can ask questions and then the district will be ready for some sort of a rollout to parents to garner feedback to move on to next steps of process. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So board members, if you have preferences on times, I think Dr. Ahart, should we schedule that offline and then we can?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any other updates as part of your report for us this evening?
I think that will do it.
Okay. Well, seeing no other updates, I will go ahead and call the board meeting for Tuesday, June 16th. I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.